Hello and welcome to the lesson on input validation in the OutSystems platform. Now, applications should try to limit the mistakes that the users make, but as much as you can try to do this automatically, they will happen. For example, input fields may have different data types that you want to enforce. You might require different values depending on what the user inputs on a different input, or even have specific verifications in face of the context. To help you implement these, the platform provides you mechanics to do input validation. Now, out of the box, the platform provides you two standard validation mechanics. One of them is the mandatory. On the top right-hand corner of your slide, you have an input for the book title, which is set as mandatory. This means that upon submitting, if the user does not provide the value, you will have a validation error. The second standard validation is the data type. So, on the other screenshots, you can see that publication date is a date, and input associated with it will make sure that the user types in a date as it submits. It's important to note that these validations only happen when the method of interaction is submit. On a navigation, there is no validation. Now, there are three different settings that the validation property of a button or a link can take. If you select Client and Server, the built-in validations that we mentioned are performed on the client side. Assuming everything is okay, the values are submitted to the server, where you'll be able, on the screen action, to perform any custom validations. If you select the server validation, then inputs are submitted to the server regardless of them being mandatory and not filled in or of the wrong data type. It is up to you to make all of these enforcements on the screen action. Finally, there's the option of none, whereby the inputs are submitted and there is no verification, even on server side, for the mandatories and the data types. Now, once execution reaches the screen action, you will notice, if you look into the scope of the screen action, that every single input has got two properties. One which is valid, which is a Boolean property, and another one which is validation message, which is a text property. If you selected the server validation mode, you will notice that for every mandatory that hasn't been filled in, or for every input where the user didn't type in the correct data type, these two properties will be set accordingly. It is important to note that an invalid input will bubble up the invalid state to the form where it's contained. So, for example, if book edition is made invalid, then the book form will be invalid. The two built-in validations are very handy, but what if we want to write custom validations that follow the business logic? For custom server validations, it's just a matter of writing explicit condition checks and assignments to the valid runtime properties in case of a validation failure. So for the valid property, you set it to false, and as for the validation message property, you set it to the text to be displayed to the user, informing him of the error and how he can fix it. So in the screenshot on the right-hand side, if you look at the second if statement, we're checking if the addition number is greater than 0. And assuming that it's not greater than 0, we go into the assign, whereby we're setting the valid of the book edition input to false, and the validation message of the same book edition to edition must be a positive number. And just to clarify, these validation properties exist for the input and input password widgets, the checkbox, the combo box, and the list box. But how do these messages, how does validation message get displayed to the user? When at any time we're re-rendering the screen, the valid property is checked. If the value is true, then the screen knows that that input is correct and it displays the regular widget. We have the first three inputs on the screenshot with no validation problems. However, if the valid is set to false, then the screen displays the regular widget but applies a specific styling and displays the validation message as soon as the focus is moved to the input. On our screenshot, we can see the effect that it has on the addition number input, our validation message having been set to addition must be a positive number. And basically, that's all there is to input validation. To recap, you have out of the box two types of validations, the mandatory enforcement and the data type verification. Plus, you can write your own validations using simple if checks and assign statements. At the end of your sequence of if and assign statements, just check the form valid, because that will unify if everything inside it is valid. That's basically it. See you guys in the next lesson.